every teacher dreams of having someone show up and say, "I've learned so much from you." Well, tonight I am just over the moon and honored and delighted to have like the best student that we've ever had come out of DCR simply show up and present us with verses. It's kind of a wild gift to realize that somehow, without your really properly knowing it, you've been inspiring more Spenserian stanzas. This is such a treat. We are so happy to introduce our newest published poet from the Dragon Common Room and to share with you his process of writing and how he came to find us. And guess what? If you've been wondering what we've been doing all this time in the Mosaic Arc in the Dragon Common Room, he is here to make it make sense for you, because I surely didn't. Welcome to the Mosaic Arc. Welcome, welcome. And I still don't probably know your name, I realize, because you've been hidden under an internet avatar. We will. I don't know whether we want to tell everybody who you've been, because you've actually been with us in DCR from the very beginning. I realized, although I think you changed your name a few times in the DCR. Is this the case?
I changed my name. Once I did, and then I brought it over to the name of my Substack just recently, so that I could have the same name on both.
Your garden name, right? But this is so I'm finding this is a kind of funny thing, because when you advertise the stream, it's like the big reveal, right? And there you are smiling, right? But we've never seen you until tonight. That this is it's something of a party and a celebration, and an introduction and a lesson. But a lot of it is in the joy of, in fact, this is working, right? The internet is working as we'd hoped it would, setting up the Dragon Common Room, inviting everyone in to make with us in this amazing mosaic. And then guess what? There are real people out there.
Yes.
And I've really enjoyed it.
No, sorry.
Wait, yes, are you AI or not? We're not sure yet.
Maybe I've just set up an AI to do my face like this. Well, pretty soon we're never gonna know.
But we don't like this idea. We don't like this idea.
Maybe you're an AI.
Well, Casey and I have met each other in person, so if we're AI, we're robots too, right?
Yeah. my AI version would be
coming
much
down
younger.
the pipe as well.
So anyway, the ladies and gentlemen, may we present Quinn, who has lived in DCR. Absolutely everybody knows him already, because you've been talking with him for years and years and years now. You did. I played with Telegram to sort of find out. It's like, when exactly did you join the chat? And I think you were literally the first one.
Oh, wow.
Really? I didn't know it was the first one.
Well, maybe I'm not sure. It's like if you changed your name, there was a deleted. This is the sort of weirdness of what being on the internet is like for us, right? It's like, under which avatar were you? I knew you'd been around for a very long time, and therefore you can actually probably tell our audience the origin stories of Dragon Common Room better than I can.
Well, somewhat, and you have yourself And you know what? Maybe we should go over that because it's been a while since we've gone over it on stream.
We should. And you can do it because you've been watching us and chronicling it. And in fact, and everybody, guys, this will be linked in the description for this. But Quinn, alias, and we would leave it as a puzzle. Can you figure out who he actually is? Wrote a guide for us of the Dragon Common Room, what we've been up to. So this is it was on the syllabus. You guys weren't paying attention. He was.
All right, so I'll give the short version, and I wasn't in the thick of things, but so back in the old days, right when Milo was kicked off, I forget what he was kicked off of, but
Facebook.
He moved to Telegram.
He was kicked off Facebook. It was when he lost his Facebook account. Yeah.
Right. So he set up a room in Telegram, and all the Milo fans congregated and got up to their antics right away, and various shenanigans happened before then. But
the lore, this is deep lore. This is like Elrond level. This is Elrond level lore.
Back in the
was there.
ancient days.
I remember.
Years ago.
So anyway, COVID hit, and everyone started to go a little stir crazy, and I forget who was it? Was it Anthony Easelin who said that we need to be studying iambic pentameter? I believe you said one time, and whatever it was, the COVID or the Easelin, you set up Dragon Common Room, and you posted up Drakes. It's time for tea and prosody.
He even knows the titles of the lore. That was on the blog, right, on Fancy Barrett Prayer blog, right, which is where a lot of the early Telegram chronicles are still all there on Fancy Barrett Prayer.
That's how I got here, was through that blog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, you set up the Dragon Common Room and decided that you were gonna form a poetry circle and teach iambic pentameter, the heartbeat of the English language, to try to restore the culture, try to realign us on Christ and on traditional art forms. And then, yes, I did. I did see the announcement, and I joined it on Telegram pretty early on, I think.
I think you were one of the first. I really do. I think you maybe changed your account name, but the Telegram remembers who you are by your phone number, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
And I didn't change the account. I might have changed my name, but yes, I started. Excuse me, at the beginning. But kind of just watched for a while.
Mm-hmm. Right, because you didn't. So you have behind you. This is like Quinn gets. He definitely. If I had badges to give out, which I should, right? He gets all the badges. You can see behind him all of our books, right? And not just the Dragon book, right? But Centrism Games, which is the first one we worked on. But you didn't. You weren't tempted at that point to jump in and start writing with us then. Although did you do any of the practice stanzas that summer? We did a lot of practice, like here. I think the first one I ever wrote was about steak.
Yeah,
right?
I remember that.
And it's like we're just going to write about anything because the point is to learn the rhythm and the feel of the the lines and things like that, rather than worrying about the what you're writing about, right? The topic was less relevant than let's just pick something to write about. So we did orange juice and we did J.K. Rowling. But you didn't do
right,
any
and
of those?
I wasn't. No, ma'am, I wasn't part of it at that point. I was still kind of doing my own thing and bouncing around on the news and on watching the news, not on the news. Hopefully, maybe someday, after I get a book out, maybe. But yeah, I was doing the same thing a lot of other people were doing during COVID, which was vegging out and watching the news and continuing in that McLuhan whirlpool that we called the pandemic era internet.
That's
wasn't
really the image of it. It's like that whirl. We did talk about that, right? Didn't we? The whirlpool that we're all drowning in because of being in this media environment. And it was, I mean, the COVID. It's interesting that we all got thrown into the internet in quite quite the force that we did by the COVID maelstrom.
Right. So I really fast forward to 2023. So, I was unemployed at the beginning of the pandemic, but then 2021 wound up, finding a job, and just did that for a while. Um, and then fast forward to 2023, is when I kind of blustered into the common room and actually started talking with people. Sorry, Mel, again. Um,
Oh, what? So you've been lurking? Is what you're saying? The thing is, I think you were there. You come on. You know that you know our backstory way too well, and also
I
the avatar that you have was gifted to you by somebody from the Milo chat.
From the Milo chat,
Yeah,
yes. So
yeah.
I was in there with you in the Milo chat,
Okay.
and then I kind of was just watching and lurking on the common room, but I didn't follow the blow by blows at that point. If I had, another timeline, maybe I'd have caught that you were actually starting, and maybe done some work with you earlier.
Mm.
But as it happened, I started in 2023, really, and then once I started talking with people, I kind of was like, let's check this out. I've been ignoring this, and it's been going for a couple years now. I'd better, I should catch up. And so I did. I started watching the very podcast we're on.
Now that must be. I think you have been. You guys, you could figure out you've got loads of different names out there on the internet, and one of them is in the chat for these videos, right? You've been one of our best audience members too. So there's this. How does it feel to have transcended the chat? Now you're on camera.
I feel like the guy who's finally living the dream. If he just posts enough super chats, he'll be able to be the guest.
No money changed hands.
He'll be noticed.
This is the Sinpei notice me moment. Well, and yes, and the thing is with the I mean it's the I mean you have meditated. We know this because you've been in conversation with us all this time, right? Meditated so much on this McLuhan experience that we're all the McLuhan moment experience we're in of. How are we interacting through all of these different layers of the media, and that we've gone from being in a chat with avatars that do or may not. For the longest time I had no idea what Casey looked like, right? And I was convinced she was like this actress from you used. No, you had a really stable picture for a long time. She had short hair.
I did. That was that was oh gosh, what is her name? Suzanne Plachette.
Right.
She did.
It's short hair and everything, and then I find out you've got long hair, and
yeah. Yeah, my hair used to be a lot longer too.
So it's we've lived through these several years of being in conversation with each other, but at different levels of, I don't know what to say, what it is, right? Because it's all on the same platform of media. Either it's in the YouTubes, but you're in the chat, you're watching it. It's
different levels of virtual reality.
Yeah.
And different media, from text to we were musing during the tech test of how we've known each other on the text and have been corresponding for some years now, about 2 years, I think, 2.5 around. But then, we've never, it's been what they call parasocial. We don't, we haven't seen each other face to face. And in a way, we still haven't. We're still in the vortex, just a little higher up, looking at each other through magic mirrors that we call cameras and the internet. And,
well, yes, that's what Casey and I had been writing together for years, and then we met in person at BaseCon last year. There was this sort of like, you talk about, the characters in your books coming into life, right? You're saying like this character that you've only known as a television show.
It's a bit surreal.
It's very surreal. So I'm not sure that I've ever seen anyone really talking about this parasocial effect. I mean, we worry about everybody going ballistic in the social media and all the bots swarming and triggering and trolling and stuff like that. But the sort of feeling of going from linear to flat to three-dimensional is. So I think the text is linear. The video is two-dimensional, right? And then if we actually meet in person and you're suddenly incarnate and you're saying, it's like, what have I become if I'm able to step out of the media into the world again?
Right, and there's been some commentary on that sort of thing since the advent of cinema. I mean, you have probably seen that clip of an early movie theater where they have the train, and the train is coming
Mm.
towards the camera, and then everyone in the theater ducks because they're not used to seeing pictures. It's like their brain is telling them the train is about to run you over. And McLuhan on the when the Mechanical Bride was talking about some other things where the media was, well, even Fahrenheit 451. Actually, Fahrenheit 451 is a better example where the lady is in her four walls. Her four walls are all television screens, and she's chatting with the characters as if they actually are talking to her, but they're not. It's a one-way transmission.
Mm.
Huh. Very interesting. Well, and that that it back in the day. I mean, we're both older than you are. But remembering watching the television and wishing you could talk to them, and now we kind of can, right? I think that's the people's experience of watching the podcasts or these like the live streams and such, and that somehow you can, like, if you jumped on the call, you could suddenly be in the television yourself. It's like Willy Wonka level of wanting
Yeah.
wanting. Can I be on television? Look, Ma, I'm on television.
But that was high science fiction too, wasn't it? That was what everybody was hoping for, that we'd be able to see the people we're talking about on the phone. It would be a television phone. That was
And
Right.
portrayed in
suddenly we got
1950.
them.
Yes,
And
and
it was
suddenly
like,
have
so do you, this is, I remember, right, growing up and having the characters in the shows having video phones. And it's like in Blade Runner or something like that, right? And it's like,
hmm
and thinking that's just never going to happen. And then there was some time around 2010, my mother was wanting me to get on Skype because that way I could talk to my brother or something like that. And I'm like, why would I want to do that? I like talking on the phone, right? And
Yeah.
no, seriously. And then there was this kind of, it's all of these blurred boundaries, right? That at some point I realized I was having video calls all the time. And I'm like, this was before COVID, so it was the possibility. But then it was very weird talking to friends that you knew, or even like my family, who I'd been used to talking to on the phone, and then seeing them talking to them in the phone.
Yeah, it
That was
feels
weird.
it feels more impersonal when you can see, rather than talking on the phone. And I think it's because the sound just came directly into your ear, and it was just kind of almost physically a comfortable thing. You were doing something physical, whereas this is very passive. You're just kind of sitting very still,
Hmm.
trying to stay within the shot, right?
Yeah, that too, right? The sort of constraint that it gives us physically.
Yep.
It's Quinn's fault
Yeah.
that
It's
I'm
a
trying to talk into the mic like this because he kept teasing me about not being able to hear me if I turned away, right?
Yeah.
Well, come to think of it, if I can actually turn my head like this and duck down, and
Oh, you're
I can
so
read from
incarnate. You're so incarnate with your headset on.
with my
With your
headset.
headset on. Yeah, so this is to establish we've somehow known each other for a long time, and yet what are we? What kind of community are we actually in? And that being the internet world is in horror and frustration right now. I think maybe it's like people have finally feel like they're getting some kind of community back, and then the AI is going to come and distort it all again. My sense is like,
Do,
at what level can we trust anything that we're seeing? We want to know that we're in conversation with real people, at least on the phone, at least in the video, at least in the text, at least in the stories that we're writing.
Right, and like I said I said a little while ago on the text chat, one of the possible ends to the timeline here is that the AI just takes over everything on the internet, and everything, nobody trusts anything on the internet because they think it's all AI generated,
Right.
and most of it may be eventually, and then people end up putting down their devices and going back to their families, going back to church, and preferring in human, I mean, in person, excuse me, in human. That could be a
I'll talk
phrase,
to my
in
dog.
yeah.
in person conversations, because it's just going to be static, like how on the phone now we get so many sales calls that we don't pick up the phone for anyone anymore.
Right.
It's always it's almost like a denial of what they call a denial of service attack,
Mm.
um, where you can't use it anymore. So I mean, that may happen, that may not. I think the internet's going to be with us forever, obviously, at least as long as we still have electricity. Um, but um, where were we going with this?
Well,
Where's the
I'm just so
boomerang?
did we get
Where's
that?
the boomerang?
You got it.
Mm.
You have not had to practice this with us on camera yet. um, what I am thinking though is that all of these, it's lovely to have you on, and these communities that we've developed, during COVID, post COVID, in the chat rooms, in the work that we're doing together. I would be very sad to lose it all, right? Because and
Right.
for me as a scholar, I mean, I was when we were guys, we did do a tech test last night because we wanted him to come on smoothly, and we're sorry we're a little bit late because we've got novelty is always a stretch. That my experience of being a scholar was I was reading people's books and got to meet them at conferences, and there was that the transition not just from text to or video into I see you as a person. I guess there's this sort of celebrity level of, someone you've only known through camera. And then they like when the first time I met Jonathan Peugeot, we both sort of went, "You're short." Because
To each other.
yeah, because we're about the same
Yeah.
height, and we sort of expected something different, right? Because of who we'd seen each other on as on camera. But when you have a voice in your mind because of someone's writing, and then you meet them in person, there is a bit of an adjustment in
Yeah.
that moment. But I would be very sad to lose all of the people that I know only through their books, and whom I've had the pleasure of meeting in person over my lifetime. Or like authors, we want to have author conferences. You have to come to BaseCon someday. Meet
That's
each other
fun.
in person, so that there's I don't know, does it diminish or extend the stories to realize they're actually authored by a human being, as opposed to, oh, they just like appeared on the internet, which is what the AI potentially can do, right? It's like the stories just appear and they don't have any actual author. I don't see how that's going to be as joyous, because we like meeting the person behind the story.
Right. And um, when you when you read something, you're using the intimate internal dialogue in your head to process it, and it's like the author is whispering to you, and it and they're often very vulnerable emotionally if they're writing a story. And it's weird, in fact, it's weird when you think sometimes that another person, there's actually a person out there who I can talk to and shake hands with. And it's like when there's that dissonance, that when in history class they assigned you to read the little passage of Mein Kampf, right? And
Never.
the
I
so yeah, there was
regularly
a class.
assign a section to my Eurociv class because it was
I've
in the
I've never
reader.
seen it.
Right, and it's weird. Yeah, I've had a class where they made you do it before, and it's like
Interesting.
it's like it's weird because you're using that same internal dialogue that you did to read Tolkien and
Mm.
and C.S. Lewis and all that, and it's like, wow, this is a guy who wrote this, and not a golden evil idol. And it's weird. I remember feeling that discomfort because it's Hitler. And so but
Hmm.
you're reading his words, and it's so intimate, and you're not supposed to be intimate with Hitler.
That's very
Interesting.
interesting. I'd never thought about that, because by the time I read Mein Kampf, I was so used to reading all sorts of different historical sources, right? It's like I not of the things I read, I'm not always thinking of. I'm usually trying to read them and teach them from the perspective of their purpose, right? The sense
Hmm.
of why did the author write this. But by the time I was in my teaching, I was reading all those modern texts. I'd been used to reading lots of other things that I wouldn't necessarily identify with the author anyway,
Hmm.
I guess.
Hmm.
So, but what you're describing, Quinn, is it's like explains why people freak out so much. If your primary
Right.
practice had been put this voice in my head, and you don't
Yeah,
want
it's an
to you
interesting.
don't want to put the
Yeah,
voice well put
Right,
voice of
exactly.
Sauron in your head or the voice of
yeah. The way you're approaching reading is it's like a personal relationship. That's an interesting take. Um, yeah, I don't think I've ever approached reading a novel like that. I do get the sense that it was a real person writing, and I get kind of excited when it's a really, really old like letter or something like 1,000 years old that's somewhere in a museum, because that's like getting getting letter in the post from the past. So that's similar, but what you're describing is way more personal.
Right, and I forget who said it, but I there's someone, and there's probably multiple people who said I why do I spend time with why do I want to spend time with all the people out there when I've got all the greatest minds back here in my study, and
that's
I just like
Machiavelli.
to read.
That's Machiavelli.
Is it
Okay, Machiavelli, yeah. Um,
When
but
he's in
yeah, so
exile from Florence, and so the only thing he can do is
sour
go,
grapes?
yeah, he can go into his well, and the thing is this is, printing has been around for maybe 50, 60 years by that point, so he's got enough books that he can put on his he spends all his day in the countryside, and then he puts on his courtier clothes, which he can't, he would have worn when he was in Florence in government. But
That's
then
kind of sad.
he got kicked out and exiled and tortured and stuff like that. And so he that particular story about how I put on my court clothes and go talk with the ancients is one. He'd been strappadoed, which is dropped, but like your arms behind your, talk about embodied, right? He'd been tortured by the Medici, and then exiled, and he was writing that from exile. So it's like the COVID version.
right,
How do I, when I'm cut off from all other possibility of this level of conversation, what do I do? And that's why I'd say, it's like coming on the internet, uh, but the numbers of people that you can have the sorts of conversations that we crazy people writing Spenserian poetry like having, there's, finding each other is a big deal. And
right.
that
Yeah,
the internet enabled us to do that. We would have never met in person, probably.
probably not. No,
Yeah, I mean,
it
well,
would have been
not
unusual. Yeah,
pre-publication, right? We might have met post-publication and know each other from
yeah.
the work or something like that. But it's the sort of challenge of finding the people you want to be in conversation with. Quinn, I have reported that someone's figured out who you are. Do you want to know who?
Who is it?
So VA Boston says, I knew it. Sir Fat Drake the Jovial.
That's right.
Oh,
So there you go. Yes, you're right, VA. We'll get you on too. Eventually, everybody ends up on the ark eventually. Well, with
I got your book over here, VA.
special invitation,
oh,
everybody ends up
nice.
on. You have to do tasks and bring milady gifts, and Quinn certainly has, right? So okay, so this is it's interesting meta exercise. Let's talk some specifics about what you've been writing. So you actually know, let's tell, if you can, elaborate a little bit more on the what you've seen in DCR, because you actually did do that wonderful onboarding guide. So anybody who's watching and you want to become what we are now, which is people who know each other online and enjoy working together. Quinn, you wrote a bit about what you've learned the process is like from participating in the chat.
Right. Well, the first thing I'd like to say is it's this blows away all of the other Telegram chats that I've been a part of, and
There
I
better be a
think we've
lot, so
really
that's actually a good thing. Yeah, there were
yeah,
three.
yeah, there were a few. Well, I mean, but this is great. This is great company. I really have enjoyed the company. It's we have a lot of intelligent conversations and a lot of conversations about the topics that are relevant to our day. And I, when yeah, I'll go ahead and say it now. I mean, when we're I remember, and I've been taking history classes. Um, they always say history is how we the story of how we got here. And I think the Mosaic Ark has done an incredible job um, teaching um, teaching the story of how we got here in ways that are overlooked in other more mainstream settings. And you've done fantastic work. I loved your Anglo nationalism
Mm.
episode where you talked about where you talked about the folk pathways, the Albion seed, where the various ethnic groups that moved over influenced the development of the nation and still does. Um, I've and other conversations. I've loved our conversations on the relation between the sexes, which for those who are not for those who are not as online as we are, there's been a big debate on every social media platform.
Yes.
Um, and there's been a lot of conflict on that, and
Well, about
y'all
how
have
men and women experience the online space differently. Yeah,
right,
yeah. I mean, Milo's famously,
right.
women should just get off.
Yeah, he's been saying that recently a lot lately too.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
then,
I mean that there being this. So there are two things there. Thank you very much, Quinn. And what I'm thinking, and I was at a party this week, up at the British consulate, and I was talking with people about like what's the study of history like, and I realized I can do things. I mean, this is what's wild and wonderful about the internet as it is, right? The bots better not take over. I can teach problems and historical problems in this context more effectively than I can on campus and class. I can do other things on campus and class more effectively, which is, it's worthwhile to considering, right? There's certain things I have not been able to translate into an online discussion, but the online discussion, it can go this sort of mosaic global problem, pulling together threads and connections and such. And one that I can't assume, what that Quinn you have done, is not everybody does the reading as well as you do. That in campus class I assign readings, I expect us all to talk through those. Here it's this sort of, I have to be constantly pulling in threads and creating, like with the images and stuff we use. It's a different sort of knowledge building that we're engaged in on the internet. And I think in some ways it's enabling us to understand things that we could not before we were in this media situation. It's really fascinating.
Do you think that's because everything has to be written out instead of spoken? Every thought?
For us or on
In
campus?
general, no, in general, like on the internet, you said the way you learn things in a different way
Well, so I think,
through.
I mean, that we do it by text and by
Mhm.
voice, right? So but also that
Text, voice, and image.
text, voice, and image, and it's permanent in curious ways, right? You know that if you say it online, you better mean it because someone will screenshot it and it's out there forever, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's a precision that hopefully people start practicing, right? It's like if I want to say this, but also a kind of, you can go back and reread over the conversations, and they
Yes.
can build that way. So there's a lot of, I mean, I don't even think we've fully grasped how much being online in the conversation enables us to make connections and narratives that were unavailable to us previously.
Mhm.
right, and it also allows people who pursue their obsession to run down all of these different sources when they didn't, and meet all these different mentors that they would never have gotten the chance to before. um, so we really, having the knowledge, the mass of the world's knowledge at our fingertips, or most of it on the internet, is a big boon to people like us.
Mhm.
But it's also terrifying because you need a guide through it. And that's,
Right.
to a certain extent what we're our cruise ship, right? We're giving you guided tours of all of these different journeys.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I think you've done really well. Is I have loved buying books, collecting books, but so when I found your reading list and started engaging with y'all, um, and I've been a hobbyist writer for quite a long time. I mean, ever since I was well, before my teens, I was writing little stories and uh, and on the playground making up stories with some of my friends
Nice.
to tell, and you and the DCR really helped me. Mostly you, because you wrote the reading lists, I presume. Um,
Well,
Gave me some
there's many
really
reading
good.
lists. There's different levels of reading lists
Exactly.
depending on which thing you want to be studying, right? And that's also, I mean, I realize it's what is my job as a professor? It's making lists. Which
Right.
we give the fancy title syllabus to, right? But it's a guided series of readings that
And there's a mosaic art for that,
there's
lists.
there's a mosaic art for that.
We
Right.
did that show too.
That right, and this being, I mean, it's one of the things I'm very grateful to McLuhan over the past few years to give me language for talking about what we're up to. Is right, all the knowledge is out there, but it's a giant ocean with no map.
Right, and you gave me a map that really took my writing to a much higher level, and a lot of things to a much higher level. I feel like I have a better understanding of lots of things, of history, of the traditions of Christianity, which being one of the unwashed heretics that blew into the common room, I have a little bit less experience in on the Catholic side of uh, of Christian history, medieval and other places. So I've learned a lot right there. Um, and I mean, kind of going down the list of
He's
the
got the
first
list. Oh,
page.
I see. We can show you. Did he actually? Here's the list that he made. Here's cool. Pull it up. There we go.
Maybe I should read a couple lines here and just maybe not the whole thing, but a few of the bullet points, and for those who haven't been following the entire podcast, um,
Right.
tell them
Here's your
what we've been up
syllabus.
to.
He wrote the syllabus
Right.
for you guys, so there's no excuse. And it is actually it's linked on the study guides on the Mosaic Arc page, but it's also pinned. and it's I put signposts to the syllabus everywhere, and people still don't find it necessarily. It's pinned in the chat and the channel. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay. What to know first? This group, the Dragon Common Room, is focused on teaching Christian poetry, art, history, mythology, theology, and symbolism from a Catholic and Orthodox perspective. We also analyze current events through these lenses. Here's what you will learn if you hang out here.
Look at this
You will learn
list. This
poetry.
is great. It's like the bullet points go on and on and on. Okay, keep going.
It's
You
extensive.
will learn you will learn poetry in its forms, especially iambic pentameter, the heartbeat of the English language. This is what we call learning to scan. Scanning means to read the meter or rhythm of poetry. Poetry is the heart and soul of our English heritage. You will learn the history of Catholicism and Orthodoxy and its peoples across the world, with particular focus on Great Britain, Australia, the Middle East, East Africa, and the United States. You will learn to apply lessons of history to the modern day. You will
We've
learn the
done pretty good
significant.
at that, right? The applying the lessons. I mean, it's like this is the problem of like
Yeah,
showing people how we're actually in the story now and it's connected.
right.
Right. I was just watching again the other day, and Kiltz was saying during back in episode in the 40s somewhere, how we're realigning ourselves with the tradition, with the story that was always there. When our modern in the modern times, we've kind of drifted away from that. We've lost it, and we're resetting.
Yeah,
And in the
the metaphor I feel like the arc fits really well with is like we're on an ocean of history, right? There's so much of the past, some of it filled with light, some of it, so dark we can't see in it if you go on further down. And I mean, even I even feel like having been reading and reading and reading for decades, I barely know drops of it, right? And just like there's always more of this ocean to explore. It's intense.
yeah. It's like the meme where the only person who thinks they know it all is the person in the middle, the midwit, and the guy on the left doesn't think he knows it all, and the guy way over on the right doesn't think he knows it all either, because the more you learn, the more you know you don't know.
It's the best image I've seen of that is the amount of knowledge you have is like the outside of a sphere, and or the inside. If you have a sphere, and you're sort of the boundaries of your knowledge are on the X out. But the more you learn, right, the sphere gets bigger and bigger. But that just means you know you know even less, right? Because
the dot gets smaller and smaller.
The thing that the edges of your ignorance get larger. So you're more aware of it. You can keep going. Guys, everybody,
Sure.
He wrote this, right? This is abstracted from what we've done, and it's the one chance you're going to get to have anything be made clear for you. Because he did. He was able to.
He was very thorough.
Yes, very good.
You will learn the significance of the veneration of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Catholic and Orthodox history and tradition, how it influenced the development of Western civilization, and how faithful Catholic and Orthodox Christians approach the Savior Jesus Christ through his mother in both ancient and modern times. You will learn how empires have shaped the structures, the medium in which we live our lives, think our thoughts, and relate to others. How these structures exert control over our minds, how Satan and his servants have used these empires to dissolve the old structures of Christian life, and how determined Christians resist these forces and even thrive within the imperial currents of the fallen world.
See, this sounds like a manifesto. We're doing pretty well, right? It's like anybody out there, if you're feeling in despair and fighting the culture war and feeling like, where do I go for, sustenance and understanding? Here!
It does sound very manifesto-like.
Sorry?
It does sound very manifesto-like. It does.
Right,
yeah.
But I mean, this is what's great is we have been doing this. He's right, but
yeah, I never would have put it in those terms before. But yes, you're correct. So yeah, maybe that's just the masculine brain. I don't know. It's different.
Probably.
Well, I wonder if I put a little too much.
And he's making law books for us.
Yeah.
And I wonder if I put a little too much tinfoil down towards the end here.
No. It's all
the
good.
Battle plans
but I will say that this is. I mean, it's nice having someone else translate it for you. And this is, we promised in the point here of like, how do you market stuff when you may not be able to do it yourself. Because it's actually hard to see what you are doing in your own work. I mean, even in academia, I was writing a blurb today for another colleague's book, right? That having someone else reflect back on you what you've done is really helpful. Because it's if you're an artist, you're working from within and you're creating the thing from within. What marketers do and what we need to figure out how to do for each other better, probably. Hans's book sale is going on right now. Everybody buy based books. VA's book is in it. That figuring out how we can better describe for each other what the point is. It's actually really helpful.
Right, and it's important to market. It's important when you're marketing yourself to be able to break it down to a quick takeaway, because that's one of the realities of the modern world. I mean, really, of any written market world, where you gotta tell people what they're gonna get. It's why I put the little blurb at the beginning of the Substack post for my poem, because if I just post the poem on the Substack and it's just naked, people are gonna scroll through and be like, I ain't reading all that.
Well, everybody needs a frame, right? And this is
Right.
the meta level of what we're doing on the internet. I mean, the internet is frustrating and confusing and stuff because it broke all the frames. Right. I think this is one of the things that the news, the mainstream media got upset about, because they'd spent decades and decades constructing their platform. A platform is a place where things are shown, right? And they knew if you turn that particular show on, you knew what it was, right? And the internet, because it suddenly made everything this interconnected web of conversations, the frames all shattered, and people don't know where they are. They're lost. And so some of our marketing is like this compassion. It's like, it's on the one, I'm not sure, it's on the one hand putting up a sign and saying we're here, but then nobody notices you. They have to be driving past or something, and they may or may not see you. But the sort of going out into the world, this is a lot of, I've been researching for a talk that I'm giving in a bit on St. Francis, and I'm thinking about how he had, go into the world and be the herald of the king in new ways, because the towns were new. We're just in this new media moment of figuring out how to be heralds for Christ.
That's an interesting point you just brought up. So the towns that he was just walking to and started preaching, these were new towns?
There's a big urban development in his lifetime in the 12th and 13th
Fascinating.
centuries. Yeah, the what you think of as medieval Europe as town life is a development of the 12th and 13th centuries. And that's one of the reasons that the Franciscans, the Dominicans, are important in the way that they are, is they have the that they participate in that media environment, which is the plaza, right? It's the town square.
Yes.
Where
it was brand new. And this is our town square. This is our plaza.
This is our plaza.
Right?
This is our town square. And we're trying to learn how to be better heralds.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And another kiltsism that I had reviewed preparing for this was she mentioned that the internet came and it obliterated all of our traditional ideas of borders, and can we even have the original tradition, the original idea of borders now? And we're forming connections. We're forming connections that would never have been possible, where we can talk to people in other countries, we can form a common mind with them, in ways that before telecommunications you didn't know the opinions of a random person on the street in Botswana or Israel or France, or and it's now you get to talk to people all the time, just when turn on the internet, and if you know someone, go leave a comment with them, or chat with them, or message them, and you're hearing all these different it's a positive, because it really promotes the common humanity across the world, where before sometimes it was a lot harder to empathize with people, and there have been times in history where the powers that be have demonized the other people. Like if you're going to war against someone, you bring up the little meme of our majestic king, their evil tyrant, their barbarian hordes, their blighted lands.
Right. It's the telegraph on steroids, right? This is the first time people heard news from around the world within a day. Was when they had telegraphs, when they would put the underwater cables in, and now everybody's got their own underwater cable, right? Only it's instantaneous. Doesn't take a day.
And it's on, and as we've been talking, it's been on all of these different levels. It's just in text, it's in videos, it may be in two-way conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was watching a little video this morning that was someone walking through the streets in Shiraz in Iran. And just walking down the street, and you see all the people, and I realized, thanks to, I mean, particularly Telegram is good because you get videos and images from everywhere. Well, maybe everywhere. A lot of other places that I realized I've never even seen a video of. Like, there's so much of the world. You think, oh, we're all connected and everybody can travel everywhere, but there's the movie locations aren't everywhere, right? There are a few select places that they go back to constantly, and then there's all sorts of places you've really never even seen a photograph of or an image of.
One of my favorite things to watch are just people. There's no dialogue. It's just somebody takes a camera and walks through a city for like an hour and 2 hours, and it's like you're just in their perspective. You're just walking down the street with them, like, this is cool. It's almost like being there. It's because I've watched these videos of cities I have been in before, and I'm like, yeah, it's exactly like that. It's really kind of cool. And then, like you say, you can watch one of somebody in Iran just walking down the street, and it feels like you're walking in their shoes. So that's kind of an interesting development.
Which gives you your next bullet point.
You will learn the benefits and drawbacks of the markets, industries, and technologies established by empires to mechanize, homogenize, and disincarnate human beings, oppress foreign and traditional peoples, dissolve culture, promote sin, make citizens dependent, and extract monetary wealth from human life. Those are mostly the drawbacks.
Minor,
The
But there's
dragon,
benefits
minor
too.
drawbacks.
our dragon staring at himself
Minor
in his crystal
drawbacks.
tower is always that, yeah.
Well, like you said, the when they were building the interstates, they ran the interstate straight through the Polish Catholic neighborhood because it wasn't, I guess it wasn't good for business or for something or other for that to be a coherent neighborhood. So
Well, and
they ran the big
conversely,
road
Yeah.
on the
through it.
south side of Chicago, they made sure that it's actually really difficult to get from the south side to the north. It's like there's weird ways in
Mhm.
which the roads go through different regions and then to completely avoid others. And you're like, wait a minute.
Right. So and we have nice things because of that. I mean, I enjoy the benefits of the market every day, and I mean, we all do. And but there is a thread that makes it hard to be a Christian sometimes in that. And you've done a great job talking about how we're going to continue to be Christians. Going back to the last bullet point, how to resist that and even thrive within the fallen world. And like you've said before, Christianity was born uh, in an empire, in the world's greatest empire, in the crossroads of the market. In that
Yeah.
empire, it's where we came to be.
Yes, it's
Um,
Jesus was crucified was the center of the world. So,
right,
yeah. And the thing
right,
is,
not
going
the
back to St. Francis, that as you said, the 12th and 13th centuries were a similar period of media transformation, and the going into the world. I mean, it's like that's what we are. We're in the world. There's monasticism, which is a contemplative, retreat, but we're made to be the salt of the earth, which I've just been in my alchemy reading. I've just learned is another cool thing, right? The salt, but the sort of salt that's necessary for the catalyst of transformation. So
Mhm.
if we weren't in the world would be sadder.
right,
Yeah.
right, and that's all that we can do, and all that the Lord has asked us to do is to let your light so shine.
Right.
Don't hide it under a bushel. And it's a way we can serve God's children is by holding up that light, no matter our circumstances. And we get caught up in the swirl of politics and news and things, but in the and that can be a downer, or that can be that can be a lot of things. But ultimately, what the Lord cares about for us participating in this is to shine that light. And like in the very first episode of the Mosaic Ark, you mentioned that our objective is to reveal Christ through our art. And I think that's a great thing to dwell on, because without without Christ, what are we? Um, people. There's a lot of people who have tried to make art without Christ, especially recently, and you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell the darkness versus the light. Um,
You really
and
can.
and
And the thing
yeah,
is,
Yeah.
the more attuned you get to it, the harder I've been seeing people saying this recently. The more attuned you get to the light, the harder it is to look at the dark. It
right.
becomes uglier and uglier. I mean, the horror, it
Well,
becomes
you
quite
realize it's
apparent.
darkness. You didn't
Right.
realize it
Yeah.
before.
Once you're no longer numb
Hmm.
Right.
to it, it gets very difficult.
Which is why it's so important to consume the right things, consume things that are filled with light, to put things into your eyes, your ears, your mind, things that are filled with God's light. Um, and that's what we're trying to do, I think, as Christian artists. Um, and there's been, we're working in fairly unbroken ground, or rather ground that has been allowed to harden, bake in the sun, because there has been a thread, at least in America, where where if you're a God-fearing Christian and you have artistic tendencies, but you're an American, the tendency is for people to say, well, go become a lawyer, but go become a
Mm.
doctor, go
Right.
become an email answerer of some kind. That's art. Don't waste your time on that. And so
That's
the people
crazy.
who, what's that?
That's crazy. Art inspires people to action. The cathedrals
Exactly.
inspired
Well,
people.
the great Christian art is liturgical and in praise of God, and so the dragon has no interest in having praise of God because he's against it, right?
Right.
That's right.
And so the deadening of people's joy is, you can see it
I
in the
just,
loss of our great art, but our great art is all made in praise of God. So
yeah, the absence of God in art and in popular culture. I thought of this as you were Christ telling us not to keep our light under a bushel. You have to shine your light, right?
right,
So
Exactly.
during Pride Month, right, the world inverts this and says, let your freak flag fly, right? It's complete
Hmm.
inversion of don't hold your light under a bushel. It's like, yeah, it just popped
yeah.
into my head.
I
Right.
can't ever hear freak without thinking the fabulous furry freak brothers, which completely like right
I
that
don't know that.
if well Quinn
What is
laughed.
that?
It's a well, I remember it from the 80s, right? And the hippie druggy characters, and there's a cat, right? It's like a I don't know if it's a parody of Garfield. Everything became a parody of Garfield back in the day, but the thing is there, my favorite one is when they one of them makes a vacuum cleaner to vacuum up all the drugs that they've dropped in the carpet, and they end up with these three little piles, and one's sort of green and that must be the pot, and there's one white that must be the cocaine, and there's this giant yellow
Oh,
one,
good
and they're
grief.
like, what's that? And they're like, oh, that must be the beer that we spilled.
That sounds like the young ones. Was that the young ones?
And it's like the young ones, only it was a card. It was
Okay.
just a comic strip. It
Oh,
wasn't a
okay.
television show. Anyway, so now see, every time you think of the freak flag, you'll think of that, and it's a
I
little
think
bit
that was
less rainbow color.
Yeah.
that's what I'm gonna have to look up afterwards. Um, but
I'm
yeah,
telling you,
the
the cartoon, the cartoons from the 80s where it's like, the not only Calvin and Hobbes, pray for Scott Adams, the Scott Adams Dilbert, pray for Bill
yes,
Watterson, Dilbert and Calvin and Hobbes and Bloom County, and then the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. Oh my goodness, we used to have really great comics, and they were the place where a lot of the stuff that we do with the memes and
Yeah.
the
That's
sort
what
of,
started.
yeah, the connections and the humor and the absurdity were developed in those comics.
Hmm.
Yeah.
right. Um, but yeah, the dragon. One thing that's important to note is whereas there has been a culture of kind of on the good guys side, kind of going away from art and writing, just leaving that to the artists and the
Or
losers.
right.
There's kind of a stigma there.
Well, but
Um,
a lot of Christian art is just dreadfully bad too.
oh yes,
I'm not gonna say which ones it is because I don't want to discourage anybody really, but a lot of it is bad. And
right,
Well, I
I
think
mean, I
it's
think
the way I feel, it's fearful. It wants to be nice, and so it doesn't tackle the difficult stuff that, I mean, the main difficult thing of is we believe in Jesus Christ as Lord, and that means we disagree with other people on certain
right,
correct, yeah.
things.
But also the artists the Christian artists try to express themselves is it's like say it's the Church of Nice, but it's like
Yeah.
I can't say bad words, I can't have characters doing bad things, you know. I can't I, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the word here. I can't show evil at all unless it's been really sanitized. Um, and I think it's because well, at least I hope it's because they're sensitive to scandal,
Yeah.
right? But
No, I
you
think it
have,
probably is. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes you just have to show the evil. I mean, Gibson did this fantastically well with his depiction of the devil in The Passion of the Christ. I mean, that was creepy. I mean, that was nightmare fuel. It really was, you know. but that was real evil, and it was real mockery, and it was disturbing to look at, right? So yeah, even he gave a warning. He says, I wouldn't say anybody under the age of 12 should be watching this, and you'd have to be a
Right.
real mature 12-year-old to watch this. And it wasn't just the violence. I think it was a creep factor too, in that. But a lot of the other stuff that gets promoted as Christian film is just, it's overly sanitized. And therefore people dismiss it. People who aren't necessarily Christians will dismiss it and not look at it
Well,
because
so
it's kind of
Quinn has been
boring.
working on his story, and we need to get to that. We need to get through the rest of this list first. So
Yeah.
we're on
Okay.
media now.
Yeah. But yeah, the dragon servants. There's always been plenty of servants doing art on his side, and I think that's interesting. That's important to note.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't he think that art was for losers? Anyway.
Oh, haha, good point.
Yeah, there's you will okay, next one is you will learn how media is that's a nice transition. You will learn how media is the primary weapon used by these empires to set the boundaries of acceptable thought, rewrite history and memory for its purposes, indoctrinate people into ungodly thoughts and lifestyles, promote occult and addictive practices, and divide, dehumanize, and subjugate humanity. You will learn that the media narratives employed by these empires repeat throughout history. They aren't new. You will break free of iconoclastic culture of the modern Western Rite and reconnect with age-old Christian art forms. You will learn how to promote and rebuild traditional Christian culture and families from within the belly of the Satanic Empire.
Yeah, I'd say a lot
Um,
of that happily. Shout out to the chat, right? That happens in DCR in the Dragon Common Room Telegram chat, because we've got a number of people more your age than our age,
right.
who are engaging in building families and communities, and really Casey and I are kind of on the opposite side of some of that. Yeah, we're old. But you guys are. I mean, on the front lines of finding each other and making new families, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it's a big important challenge. Yeah, so guys, if you're listening, if you found us on YouTube and you want to know where these kinds of conversations are happening, they are in the Telegram chat with the Dragon Common Room.
And while we're on the topic, ladies, I am available.
See, if we start having grandchildren out of this exercise, that'll be even better than poetry.
Yeah.
We know there's some babies around, so that we can't take any credit for that yet.
Right. And it gets a little heavy in these bullet points, but I mean the point is when you say the Satanic Empire, you mean all of the currents and temptations in this world, that where evil tends to reign,
Yes.
and it's hard to find. It's more, it's always been the case that good has been more in pockets, among a darker, larger um, world. I mean, peace on earth, or peace even within your country or community. It's happened, but it tends to be short lived whenever it's recorded to have happened, and it tends to be a little harder for Christians.
It always has been, though. That's the what you're saying. It's like when we look back on the past and see the light, we're focusing on the points of light. Right? And
Yeah.
not to say that, nobody in the Middle Ages was actually really Christian, because there's a big movement particularly in the 70s and 80s, and in my academic field, of scholars trying to pretend that nobody was actually ever truly converted to Christianity, and then flip side of, or it was only the elite, and now we've figured out no, the elite wasn't even really Christian. It's this sort of exercise of proving that the past wasn't really Christian is an ongoing one, and even in the scholarship.
You have to ask them, why would they care?
Well, indeed, right. So
Yeah.
the sense of
It's just projection.
that what the cross means is it's our Christ took on the struggle that we are all facing and dealing with all of these temptations and the temptations that he showed us through the ones that Satan tempted him with, of power and control and comfort. All of it's the same over and over and over again. And that's what's interesting about it. It's like saying Christ actually does give us battle practice. He teaches us how to deal with all of these trials. And like Saint, I'll just keep going on Saint Francis because I'm thinking about him. That he actually does mean us to be in joy because he's won, right? The great the great joy of Francis's singing his praises is through the passion, through the conquering of death, into he's now he's our great King. So if you guys are interested in Christ as King, Francis is your man. Because he was singing the praises of Christ as King.
Right, and it's one of the blessings we have to be able to shine God's light in a world of darkness. I mean, if this were still just the Garden of Eden, and there was everything was roses and unicorns and rainbows, then we wouldn't get this opportunity to really experience opposition, experience what it's like to not be in God's presence, and we all have the opportunity to really prove ourselves in a sense, and that makes it a blessing to have so many things arrayed against us, because then we have a chance to stand up and say, hey, I'm going to shine the light of Christ, despite everything. And I think that's something that we can give our wills to God, and it's a great growing experience for us, for our souls.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. You will learn male and female social hierarchies.
And battle with the Supreme Dark Lord over whether or not we've defined the feminine one correctly. You can go over the go to Vox's Day Sigma game and tell him whether don't.
Because according to his new best friend,
hi, unauthorized. Right?
Do I hear a brigade being called for?
Well, sorry. Do you hear what?
A brigade, calling for your followers to go and
gosh, no.
Heaven, no, he'll stick your heads on spikes, metaphorically.
Yeah, he will. You absolutely will.
I don't send the innocent into that fray. However, we are unauthorized too, so sometimes people may be watching and realize that yes, indeed, sometimes I go and argue with Vox.
Well, I don't know if they like getting smacked down.
If you say it's like,
okay.
if I survived Milo's chat, right? How many times we've talked before about that, right? And I've forgotten about it. How many times I got banned and kicked out? And why, if you want to know my name on Telegram, is the confusing Handmaiden of Mary. It's because my true name, Rachel Fulton Brown, got transformed through some mockery into things that I didn't like looking at the time. So I changed my name. I became more humble. Which was actually good for me, right? It's like, I don't want to be professor in this context, although I am. I want to be here serving, right? So here we are, serving. Yeah, so you got two more. You were participating and what we're going to do with it.
Right, you will participate with a supportive community of fellow writers, thinkers, and artists under the direction of an acclaimed professor from the University of Chicago.
Who refuses to let you know who she is, so, it's disguised behind her statue, which is this one. I don't know whether this is practicing humility or not advertising myself well. I don't know.
I think it's
That's right. I mean, you've never been hiding. Go ahead, Casey.
I said I think it's just a general need for reading skills in the public. So.
Right, everyone.
Okay, well, this is actually reassurance. It's like, so Quinn, we dragged Quinn into the light of the Mosaic Ark tonight, right? It's like, interestingly, if you start speaking out, and Christians, you need to know this, if you start speaking out, nothing bad happens. Half the time they won't even figure out who you are. And if you do get, sort of in the moment, and the sign of the cross is always helpful, and you're suddenly there in the moment, you will be given to say what you need to say, and good things happen. You meet more people. But it's been sort of funny. It's like the more I tried to make sure that everybody could figure out who I was by linking everything to everything else, the less it seemed to be a problem, right? Like nobody could figure out who I was anyway. It's hilarious. Now the internet has a kind of weird effect on what sort of identity you can actually sustain, right? It's like it's an interesting problem.
Yeah. Maybe it would help if people learned how to read Bleak House.
Well, I'm still waiting for the Megalosaurus walking around London, right? The dinosaur fantasy version of Dickens.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the bones?
I know. I was promised a Megalosaurus. I want a Megalosaurus.
It would be hilarious if they put a reading of Bleak House in the new Jurassic Park movie.
That would be really good. That would be a good connection, wouldn't it?
Good.
Okay,
yeah.
so here my new it's more St. Francis connections, right? St. Francis actually loved the before he converted and was the herald of the great king. He loved all of the chivalric romances and the chansons de geste of Roland and Oliver and Charlemagne and such, and loved them so much that guess what? Well, it's like he whether he was gifted it or he had it, but he had his own horn, just like Roland. apparently the lore being that he used it to like summon people to the sermons. I need a horn. That's clearly what I need. It's like an ivory elephant horn.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, to announce that things are starting. Okay, so if thus armed, you will be here, whether anybody knows who you are or not. You have your own avatar character in the internet world.
Thus armed, you will gain the tools and the education you need to participate in the great art war on the side of our Lord Jesus Christ and bring people home to Him. It's not for losers anymore. Get in, losers. We're saving Western art and Christian art.
And we are. Okay, so here, this is Quinn's introduction, and then he gave there's several more pages of it, which we're not going to read all the way through, with links and links and links to what to do first, where to find us, where to find me, what our books have been, where to find Vox if you want to go argue with him about the social sexual hierarchy. Don't ask him what level you are, guys. You'll just get banned.
Just tell him you're an alpha.
No, ask him if you are.
That's not going to help. So recommended reading, yes. So the thing that Quinn did. Now, what we are going to now pivot. We now come to the part of the show where Quinn tells you what he's been doing with all of this learning. And the first thing that he did, not only does he, as you see behind him, read our books and then this recommended reading, other than the Professor and DCR, he bought all of the books that I put on the reading list for Draco Alchemicus. I'm not even sure I own all of the books.
No, I don't.
I wanted to, so I did.
It's a good reading list. So that
it is a good.
What do you do with your learning? And I think this is, I will say this. The challenging thing for me to be teaching on the internet is I need to be able to give you homework, right? Because the best way you learn things is, one, by trying to explain it to somebody else, so aka teaching, right? If you really want to learn a subject, you end up having to like make lesson plans and describe it for people. And if you are, an autistic INTJ like me, you do it from the time you're 3. But because you're just desperate for people to understand, and you're going to talk to them But giving people an exercise to use the knowledge with, right? And I have found the reason that the Draco Alchemicus poem has such an extraordinary reading list is writing the poem itself is giving us purpose and place to put all of our knowledge. So it's hard just to learn something just by reading lots of books. You need to have a goal, right? You need to actually have a target of exercise that you're working towards, which is why you should do your own homework and not let ChatGPT write stuff for you, right. People in college. or any, it's like the only way your mind actually is going to learn stuff is if you wrestle with it yourself and take the pieces and put them together. So this is a kind of, it's like I've given you all of all of this reading. You don't just read it and stuff it all in your head and then say I know stuff, right? Knowledge is a practice. It's not something that is just memorizing. Memorizing is a practice too, but it's crafting together and putting all of these pieces together. So we give you books and we give you reading, but recognize that they're coming. Let me see what else is on here. Oh yeah, and there's some frequently asked questions so you don't get lost. But that if you're, don't be intimidated by the reading lists. Recognize that they were all put together as more like workbooks, right? The original Dragon Common Room reading list I did was that all of these are still linked through the homepage too, or the Dragon Common Room page. The Dragon's Keep reading list was giving you lots of models for Christian poetry and stuff, but it was all with the background exercise of you need to craft in order to learn. You have to be working with the information and materials and images and stories in order for them to become meaningful for you.
Yeah, I'd like to add something about the reading list. A lot of the stuff on there is difficult, especially if you've never read that kind of level of stuff before. Do it anyway, because it's an exercise for your brain, and you learn through struggle. You learn how to read it.
Right.
Just by doing it and reading it 2 and 3 times over if you have to. And things that a lot of these texts come with notes to help explain them. We went over this when we were reading from Bleak House a couple of weeks ago. You never just get something, here, read this, now you understand it. No, it always comes with notes and explanations. But that's all part of it. Part of it is learning how to understand what you're reading, and struggling through it is part of the learning. Really good for your brain.
Right. And I've got a lot of it left to go. But that's where it goes back to I'm really happy I found you, because you have given me leads on stuff that I never would have just even thought to hunt down, and I wouldn't have known where to start looking for it. And I feel like I've gotten a much better grasp on the Western canon and the historical canon and the philosophical canon, and it's really helped me inject the right feelings and moods into my writing, and I thank you for that.
I thank you for taking and it's different. What I don't give is I don't give the great books lists, right? That a lot of people the desire for the great books list I appreciate, right? Which is, please, where do I start, right? And the great books list is a perfectly good place to start. But the construction of that list has its own history. We've sort of gestured towards that a few times. In the mid 20th century, it doesn't have enough medieval in it. It doesn't really have enough Christian in it, although it does have Thomas Aquinas, and it is very much keyed to the dragon world. The great books list that Mortimer Adler and published out of the University of Chicago was designed for the global empire. And
fascinating.
No, it directly was. We should really do an episode talking about that. I did a lecture in Australia about it, right? And I pointed to some of that, but we should talk about that in detail. So the reading lists that I've given and that Quinn has been working off of, and that we've been writing our poetry off of, is reconstructing the whole world view. I mean, and that Tolkien knew, right? Because of being his medieval scholarship. So these are two things. One, that the reading list are places to start, and two, that you're always finding. It's like I'm always on the lookout for, I need to add that. I need to add that. The lists keep growing and multiplying and things like that, because I'm finding it's like a big puzzle that you're constantly finding more pieces to. And
yeah, I'm laughing because I know your list is never going to end. That's because that's the way your mind works.
It can't. It's like you read like food. Right? It's like food.
Yeah.
It's not something you read and master. It's a practice. It's a practice. So all of that being said, Quinn has been practicing. So tell us about your project.
Well, I've kind of had a little fantasy universe going on, ever since I was a teen, and it went through several different, major iterations, and I just kind of, threw everything I loved into it, and have written many snippets and attempts and drafts and other things. um, it kind of coalesced into the state that it's in around 2013, 2014, and
Oh,
it's only
wow.
gotten more coherent from there. I feel like I've been really, tightening it up, strengthening it, injecting more Christianity into it, and more. I really love redemption stories. I really love um, when that moment when evil turns good.
Mm.
Um, and the poem that I've written is kind of a good entry into that fantasy setting, and it also happens to be a redemption story. And it's about a monster who um, there's a baby, and it's in a fantasy world where it's kind of almost a Lovecraftian setting, but I've spun it so that it's. I don't know if Lovecraft would have approved when he was alive of what I did, because what I did was I injected Christianity back into Lovecraft, um,
I
Yeah, he
can't
and
read
probably
said,
wouldn't.
Lovecraft. Lovecraft is just straight despair. I
Yeah,
right,
he's an
exactly,
atheist.
it yeah, it's everything is just like the color of evil, that one I've read. I mean, they're all short stories, right?
I
And
Yeah.
actually haven't read a whole
You're talking
lot
about
of
the
it, but I've read a lot of. I've read there's great authors that have taken the concept and fleshed out there. There's a couple of really good video games out there that are super literate, that talk about it. But um, anyway,
so you've
um,
had a mediated version of Lovecraft is what you're saying.
right, or Lovecraftianism, where
Yeah.
there's a world and there's all these monsters out there, and you live on your little planet, and you you find out that there's all this horror out there if you're willing to do the work to look, and then you regret looking. But what I did was, well, I like monsters. I really enjoy monsters, so I want to have monsters in my story, but I don't want evil in my stories. I want evil in my story, but I don't want the whole cosmos to be evil in the end, like in a Lovecraftian story. I want to have a Christian story. So what I did was I put God back in, and then I had to solve the problem of, well, if God created monsters, then that means, there's got to be a plan for the perfection of their souls as well.
Hmm.
So, and then I kind of went from there and built some cool stuff.
Nice.
But anyway, uh, it's uh, it's about it's about one such monster, and there's a kingdom where that's kind of got a lot of evil occultism going on right now, and there's a lady who goes to sacrifice a baby because she wants a blessing from the cosmic power, and this monster encounters her, and she answers the ritual and takes the baby. And um, it's a really cool turn in the poem, but since we're talking about it, I mean,
Well, you want
the
people to read the
monster ends
poem.
up.
You want people to read the poem, but you have to tell them enough about the poem to get them to want to read the poem. It's a really the
Right,
marketing problem is intense, right? It's like how much do you
Yeah.
tell?
right, exactly. And the cool thing about this poem is, it starts with a really kind of high octane, scary description, of how the ritual goes down, but then the monster takes the baby and makes as if she eats the baby, but then when she leaves, it turns out that she spared the baby, because her own god requires her once a year to show mercy on someone.
So she usually eats the baby, is what you're saying. I mean, this is
I
the way you said. So maybe you read a little bit so people can get the flavor of the setup that you've done because it's actually quite powerful. He's
right, where should
terrifyingly
I?
good at Spenserian stanzas, guys. You
He's very good.
Thank you.
Very good. Yes.
and both of these things are true, terrifyingly and good. Terrifyingly good.
Yeah, I highlighted a paragraph
We
that was
know
my
how hard it
favorite.
is to pull off what he's done, and it's really
Yeah.
exquisite. Yeah.
Well, let's see if I can get through. Well, you think I should just go and start reading a few stanzas and then?
Um,
Um,
so what I like, if it's giving them the Lovecraftian horror part, it's like get to the you didn't number your stanzas. Now I don't remember about the point when the woman comes up to give the sacrifice, right? And because
right,
your opening is kind of an invocation to the deity, but there's the action
right.
when the woman comes to give the sacrifice is quite terrifying. I
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so it establishes the scene, and they're in this kingdom. So to Neris, that old capital, I went to sample the remains of scurvy crimes. For ere some sorry, desperate wretch was spent and strewn out lifeless in its gloomy climes, it made an easy, tasty meal sometimes. Tonight the cobbled park held none who died, but midst the trees beneath its hollow chimes, one phantom sought a rendezvous to hide. With my keen eyes, an odd, intriguing sight I spied. A lady stalked the streets by midnight moon, a babe discreetly passed into her hands. A silver toll appeased her surly goon, who slipped away back to his pirate bands. There was a certain chapel in these lands. To its back door she crept and knocked a script. A furtive priest with furtive body brands admitted her and bade her stay tight-lipped as they descended to a dank and bloody crypt. He took her there and left without a word. The deal was made and set up in advance. She looked around the dungeon and she heard a deathly silence bind her in a trance. Herein she knew the cult had done its dance. In dimmest light she spied the altar stained. The floor a blood-etched mirror caught her glance. She snuffed her lamp and drew the knife ordained, her bundle doomed to have her precious heart be drained. The, the lady
Yeah.
set the girl upon the slab. She stirred and wept as if she knew her fate. Stay calm now, Rhea. Calm, it's just a jab. But Rhea's anxious fears would not abate. She heard the baby wail upon the slate, and in profane reflection in the floor she thought she spied herself a ghost, the weight of all her pain and fears full swollen sore, to burst her and rebirth a demon and a whore. The woman blinked and shook with gasps and sighs, then prayed to breach the gates with voice unsure. O ravenous dragon, come and rend the skies! O cloud confound, let souls and minds unmoor! O hands enchant and chain me with allure. This is an echo of the first invocation here. O mother fallen, relish death and guilt, and grant my wish as mercy I abjure. My soul I rend, my blade plunge to the hilt, to damn myself and forge thy pact. This blood is spilt. Her knife whipped down, her eyes shut tight with dread, but met just stone. Her heart stopped in her throat. The baby whined from up above her head. Her muscles froze. She squeaked a fearful note and groped to find her sacrificial goat. Eyes still screwed shut, she stepped back in distress and bumped into somebody's lacy coat. A wraith rose tall, fine hat and blackest dress. Pale drooling mask hid teeth and limbs in foul excess. We like our treats alive, the monster purred. She towered, smoothly slinking to approach. You have a wish? Then speak it to the third. I'm hers, she said. You monster, cursed roach. The lady sniveled, pierced by the reproach. Eratosh, she tried in vain to speak. I'm barren. Then her bladder was abroach. The shadow sneered and stroked the baby bleak. Oh, insect, vermin, beast, is that but all you seek? Garshal, the changeling mother, doffed her mask. Her face was nothing but a set of teeth. You made yourself a monster this to ask. A life you trade, then I a life bequeath. And now we see the soul that lies beneath, like Nazra Downs, who wrought a greater sin. Upon her tail a blade came out of sheath, the one that gave this babe a changeling twin. I heard, did you? But I'll still trade you. Let's begin. The lady started. You'd give me seed? Why not? The apparition hissed malign. I'm quite endowed indeed to fill your need. A true-born babe who bears my blood divine. Shall scoffed, and you shall have your babe condign. 'Twill have your blood snake, true-born, fair and square. She will be yours, your husband's, and be mine. Shall's arm lashed out and hoist her by her hair. Since you've become a monster, that's what you shall bear. Garshal slammed Rhea against the nearest tomb. Poor Rhea's scream was stopped by Garshal's tail. The needle pierced her belly to the womb. The girl's eyes bulged. She choked upon her wail. Oh, one more thing, Shal whispered like a gale. If you abort this child or bring her ill, if you don't guard and raise her without fail, I'll end you, Lady Belfray, can and will, and your entire house and line and circle kill. Garshal grinned sharp and terrifyingly wide. See if I don't. And Lady Belfray twitched and felt warm sickly slickness swell inside. My spawn will take from wife and husband hitched, and make a daughter fair and fell bewitched. A fey shape-shifting monster, cold and wild. In bloodlust and betrayal she'll be enriched. And with this horrid prophecy Shal smiled, put sobbing Rhea down, and looked upon the child. You did this, monster, watch, she said with scorn, and placed the babe upon her tongue, and chomp! The girl was gone, and Rhea left forlorn. Then Shal sank through the mirror full of pomp, as if the floor were liquid like a swamp. Now live with it, she said of how she'd dined, as Rhea gagged and bled from savage tromp, and Riven, seeing hope and fate unwind, in horror groaned and wept. No, please, I've changed my mind. And now you know the folly of the damned, Visalgia's shame, with guilt and madness soaked, with plots and sordid terrors fully crammed, and lost from light, with sin too fully yoked to see the magic heavens tinder stoked. These scenes and more I ponder in my heart, while to and fro I flutter inky cloaked. I've lived as long as time, I'm very smart, but I'm remiss for nixing one important part. Death quailed, and in the hidden pathways wild, by which all shadow monsters stalk and steer, a beam of mercy burst upon the child. Garshal's great tongue then ceased to be her seer. The monster dried her, kissed, and held her near. You're safe, sweet light. You are the third's to spare. For her I offer pity once a year. I'll mark you with her sign and say a prayer, and hand you off to someone's warm and loving care.
That's great.
I think that might.
So creepy. That's really wonderful.
Thank
It's
you.
so creepy, you know, as you're reading that, it's like it's so dark and dank, and you can like feel the filth of the place, like
Mhm.
some Victorian back alley. It was
And that's
really
kind of what I
well
was.
written.
Thank you. It's kind of what I was going for, and then she has a soliloquy about what she's going to do. And I one thing I did unintentionally here, and it's one of those things that you don't know you did until you realize you did it afterward. Is I set up a foil here. And there's a commentary in here that again I didn't really mean to put in, but a commentary on priesthood,
Mm.
on because you saw the guy who set this up for her, he just took her in and he bounced, right. And a
Yeah.
priest's job is to represent God to the people and the people to God, and so that guy has a way of not doing it.
Mm.
Whereas if you skip forward to when it's gotten much more positive and beautiful, Garshal goes, and she's got to pledge her fast before her monster priestess.
Mhm.
After she's decided to adopt the child, and because she can't think of anywhere safe to put this baby, and she's supposed to act with mercy, and so she's thinking about, well, I don't want to get her killed,
Mm.
but skipping forward, this is an interesting comparison here. Went one page too far. So she comes home, and she tells her fellow changelings what she's going to do, and then a kiss goodbye, then east through woods and vale she went, with servants close and babe in hand, the temple priestess of the third to hail, and consecrate her offering with a brand. Down in the darkest, deepest valley stand, they reached a doorway carved into a cliff, where from a fount of water pure and grand cascaded, sparkling soft to fill the griff. Upon the bank a mantis waited with a skiff. That's ancient Hebrew symbolism of the temple, where there's water flowing out from the
Mm.
gates of the temple.
Ah, nice.
Nice.
Um, Shawl bowed, then crossed and climbed the granite stairs. The rippling stream sang cave chants mystic tone. The luminous water roused and pulsed awares. The sanctuary danced with dreamlike drone as fireflies flashed their flickers upon the stone. Shawl reverently approached. Her heart light bloomed. The water pooled around the altar's throne. Within the apse, a glowing maelstrom spumed. A swirling torrent rose wherein a figure loomed. From liquid kell emerged a slender youth, in ivory mask and elegant array. Before her piercing eyes of love and truth, Garshal's facade evaporated way. O third blessed witch, have mercy on this stray! She waved her sigilled hand to wake the well, and was encircled by its writhing spray. 6 eyeless fluid snake heads breached the swell, to form the third's majestic priestess Kaidragel. She cast her wide and starry gaze with poise. I thought inside my corner, did she see me? Then 7 voices beamed with joyous noise. Hail, Moonin, full of heart! The third has graced me. To think I'd be the first to greet and bless thee. Said Shawl, Your Grace, I don't know what you mean. I've come to pledge my fast and spare this baby. Don't mind, said Kai. Thy sacrifice is seen. This love thou'st wrought is most delicious to thy queen. The priestess motioned, and Garshal approached. She placed the babe upon the altar wet, and marked with special ink the neck she'd poached. She leaned, and with her teeth she pricked her pet, and whispered, waving wrath for mercy's debt. But finishing the prayer, she flared and coughed, and barely missed her friends with flaming jet. Kai started. Shawl, what is this fiery waft? Shawl gasped and fell, but Priestess Kai held her aloft. Shawl told her all, flesh sweltering to the bone, while skillful Kai her healing tried to ply. She needs a home? My dame, you're not alone. I would not burden you with this, dear Kai. You have enough to bear without this fry. Then take this cask of sacred water rare. The goddess tears won't let your heart burn high. If you need more, send word, I'll share. Take care. And for the journey on, she helped Shawl to prepare. Shawl got sick earlier in the poem because became her heart became too good, and now uh, she's dying slowly
Mm.
because
Oh,
monsters are made of monsters have an evil nature, and so her decision, her epiphany, which we passed over, it changed her heart, and now that's slowly killing her because her body can't take it being a monster of darkness.
Hmm.
oh,
Nice.
yeah.
But
So I want to
yeah,
ask you about the that you've written this in wonderful verse, and I wanted you to talk some about that as well, because I didn't realize you'd been working on this story context for so long, and that,
Mhm.
but you did tell me that you'd originally been wanting to write it in prose, and
Mhm.
then you started write you started. Why did you start writing it in verse? And what have you? I mean, the thing is, I think it's an incredibly effective form for the story that you're trying to tell, and I'm wondering what, because and we also, Casey and I can absolutely fully appreciate how hard it is to craft all those stanzas so beautifully as you have.
Yes.
I mean, really, guys, this is amazing, and
Thank you.
really they're one that it's interesting as you're reading. I'm wondering how many people are hearing the stanzas, and rather than just hearing the sort of, because you've which is hard for beginning poets, and it's hard, with practicing and such. You don't wrench the language to get those rhymes and those in moments and things like that. It's all
Mhm.
just, it just feels like it's the way it has to be, right? So it's like this crafting. I mean, at the level that we're really hoping to inspire people to do, craft everything so that it all fits. The rhyme fits the meter, fits the story, fits the sense, and that what we've discovered in writing our poems is there's certain things that you can say that wouldn't be sayable any other way except in the
Mhm.
verse. And yet, of course, one of the sort of archaisms that we're playing with and writing it in Spenserian stanza is narrative poetry has not been terrifically in fashion since, I don't know, maybe T.S. Eliot or something, but not since the 19th century. And yet, writing fantasy in poetry is, in fact, what, for example, Tolkien wanted to do. It's like there's a sort of
It
um
works. It's perfect because it's like an incantation. There's a lot of magic in fantasy.
oh yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. Yes, it's
Yeah,
an
it's beautiful.
enchantment through the rhyme and the meter, and that's what, when Frodo is listening to the songs that are being sung in at Rivendell, and he feels himself caught in the the
Mhm.
beauty of the language, and then it goes to Bilbo's song into the verse, right? So that there's a fantasy level of experience that's only accessible through the verse. And Quinn, you're very definitely capturing it with your characters, but I'd love to hear you talk some about, like, how did the characters change in trying to write them in this form, like with the monster finding herself dying, and that's interesting, or the way in which you feel like you're inside the characters, being able to describe them more accurately. What has happened in trying to transform your story into this particular form?
Well, the story, I've had the story in my head for several years now,
Right.
or at least this in 2020. Here's the timeline. In 2022, I finally got up the motivation and the will and the right mood to go through this the tale of this baby, um, and her life in the city, um, into which Garshal eventually carries her, and she takes her to this Lovecraftian location where one of the monster goddesses has built this city for monsters, but has she is she is divine herself, and I'm with C.S. Lewis on this. Godliness cannot be evil, and evil
Mm.
God is a contradiction in terms in
Mm.
Mere Christianity. He says that. So I had to figure out how to, you know, I have this magic system that's mentioned in the poem where a human forms this covenant with a monster and they become soul partners. And the idea behind that is that the soul of light allows you're able to share your light with that monster and bring them redemption, and in turn you get to have a cool monster with you. So yeah, that's how I kind of folded in the fun of monsters, both having really scary monsters and also one of those stories where the monster's your friend. Like Godzilla's the good guy and you're rooting for him and he's a bro. Um,
Oh, or like Saint
so
Christopher, right? The legend. He was
I'm not familiar with it actually, but
he was, yeah, but well, he was a giant. He was a monster who terrified everybody until he became a Christian, and then he became helpful.
Right. So I wrote it. So the first thing, the goddess of monsters has 3 daughters, and the first thing they did when monsters were first created was obey this commandment to find a soul partner and receive that light into themselves. And so the second daughter did that, and now she's what they call a witch. She did it with an angel, in fact. Um, and now she's built the city, and because of that, she decided to put a neighborhood of humans in her city, so that the city is kind of mirroring that. It's this city of monsters and darkness, but at its heart, it's got this light. Um, that's a little bit of a diversion, but that's where this girl grows up, and I wrote that, and um, when I wrote a, about half of a novel worth of a first draft about her adventures, but then I started getting involved in the common room and said, okay, what can I was thinking about that writing Christian poetry challenge that you had issued, write 50 stanzas.
I was the
Write
assignment
a
for the
story.
class, going back to
Right.
the problem of like how learning happens in craft, and that I offered the class that you have the book for that one too. That the one assignment was write 50 stanzas in iambic pentameter, but they didn't have to be a particular form. They just had to be. I think we were writing Aurora Borealis and a Tovarima, and so I had 8-line stanzas in my head rather than 9-line ones like the Spenserians. But anyway, so it was actually just an assignment, but you took it as a challenge.
I did. I wanted to, at this point, I was wanting to get more involved in the common room and in the writing of the poetry. And up until then, I had posted a couple of small poems, like I wrote that stanza about the solar eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote one. Oh yeah, that meme about the guy who was hitting on the girl. Become my trad wife, bear me sons 13.
One day we're
So
gonna have to have the occasional poems published as a book. If I don't watch out, I'm gonna start my own publishing house for real. But anyway,
right, we're gonna have
He's
to
not
collect the
kidding.
poems like the like in the big anthologies. They're getting the authors little notes and fragments in
right?
there, making
Yeah.
sure they have everything. But anyway, I had done a little bit of that, so I decided that I was going to take the Writing Christian Poetry Challenge. And I thought that an appropriate topic for that would be the story of how this girl came to be raised by a monster in the city of monsters
Mm-hmm.
on this far-flung plain. And I had sketched out that scene before. I'd actually done it as a comic book screenplay, well, comic book, whatever the equivalent of a screenplay is for comic books. And I'd
the
also
script or whatever. When they write
the script, yeah.
I don't. That's not what they call it. But yes, you'd written it out, and as you would, like Chuck Dixon's has talked about that, right? How you write.
Storyboard? Is it?
No, I don't remember what they call it. But you have to write out what
plot, yeah.
what each panel is going to have, and the
Right.
dialogue and everything. Yeah.
And then I tried it. I tried bits of it in prose, like the aftermath of that ritual scene. The ritual scene was the one I tried to do in comic book form, because I was imagining the cinematography of it as well, how the camera angles would play out, where the two people would be positioned. But anyway, I had tried the aftermath of that in prose, and that, when I decided to make it a poem, I referred back to those notes. And I said, I'm going to do this as a poem for the Writing Christian Poetry Challenge. And I wound up doing Garshal's entire backstory here,
Nice.
where she's living in this kingdom. She and her tribe of monsters are preying on the population of this city, and insinuating themselves into the families, and causing all sorts of mayhem and paranoia and strife. But secretly, she's been thinking about this goddess that the third is kind of an interesting goddess who she's kind of, her domain is kind of the inviting the monsters to partake of the light of the covenant that I've written here. And she's thinking about that, and she's going around being a monster, of course. In fact, she's a matron of her tribe. And then one day after, it's kind of a how conversion happens in real life. Sometimes a principle is, you're taught something in Christianity and it kind of floats in your head for a while. You don't really apply it.
Right.
But then there just comes a day, one day, where you get it and you're converted. You feel, the Spirit of God moves upon you, and it suddenly all clicks. So that's what I did for this poem, was write that story and how she takes the baby so that she can do this mercy sacrifice, but then ultimately she has that conversion moment, and it changes her heart, and then she adopts the baby and takes her to the city of monsters, and tries to, does her best to try to raise this human baby, even though she's a monster. And that's what I did.
So that's wonderful that you've actually been doing not just the writing Christian poetry challenge, but the media challenge, right? It's like which media. So I realized my first encounter with McLuhan was indirectly through my professor in New Testament who was teaching us how to read the Gospels. But actually talking about McLuhan came from McLeod's Understanding Comics, which I now realize is a gesture to understanding media, which is the McLuhan textbook, right? And that Scott McLeod in his Understanding Comics, which I loved, I've used it in class before, thinking about medieval manuscript, in the interaction between text and image, and the sort of way you tell narratives in story in panel form and things like that. And McLeod is brilliant on the hermeneutic problems of episodic, the sort of how many different images do you use. I realize I use this when I put together my slides for class, right? It's like the leap of understanding that I'm trying to trigger for people between different images. But that you have been, and one of McLeod's things is in a McLuhan mode, saying this medium can do things that other things can't, that comics can do things. And it was McLeod's big effort to say they can do things that movies, they're like movies, but they're not movies. They're scripts, but they're not. There's, this, and I made this argument, which is how Zay, our artist for Volume 1 of Draco Chemicus, found me, saying that comics are a fundamentally incarnational art, right? That they are body and spirit conjoined, and that they're therefore, ironically, extremely Christian, because
it's a great explanation.
And but McLeod was always frustrated that he couldn't find a way for comics to be anything other than superheroes. But then you realize that that's because they're Christian. So they're
right.
Superheroes. They're always defaulting to salvation.
Yeah.
This has a St. Francis element too. I'm sure you guys have guessed, right?
magical knights saving maidens with sacred artifacts. I mean, it's the same story.
It's kind of the same, right? So if comics are having trouble now, it's because you're fighting it. The medium wants you to tell the story, the story of salvation.
Right. It's not just a tool. It's like you said, it's fundamentally Christian.
The medium is the message, right? Yeah. And the degree to which this is therefore, and that's one of the reasons we did Draco Chemicus as both image and text. And therefore I'm interested that you in fact ended up writing the verses, but that you'd been thinking about it as a comic before that. So it's this incarnational monster, it's the monster's incarnation that you're trying to grapple with.
It's incredibly rich images you put in these verses. It would be amazing to see actual artwork along with it, but you can already see it as you're reading it. It's incredible. Well done.
Maybe someday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, it's almost, it's like and it's lovely that we're debuting you here orally, so that you were able to read it, and that people can have that sense of it, the bardic chanting. It's like Beowulf should be chanted in a mead hall, right? Well, but I mean, it's
Sounds like fun.
interesting that since the live stream is an oral visual medium, that performance of stories, it's like the audiobooks are obviously performed and it's just audio, but that the way in which we invite people into our poetry by way of speaking it, right? This is an incarnate practice that we're engaging in with the breath and the body and the hopefully the livingness of a stream that is actually being recorded too. So you guys are mainly watching this later, but it's all there, right? The improvisational reality of poetry, which is also finely crafted. You gave us some examples. I wanted to give you a chance to talk about it. You actually tried out different forms of the same stanza. And here, this is we like our treats alive. That's a terrifying line. But we have your Spenserian version and your Atova Rima version of the same stanza. And that I like, because we haven't done this kind of demonstration before. Why did you choose Spenserian over Atova Rima in the long run? Because Atova Rima would work too for like a heroic story, for a kind of adventure. It's Ariosto wrote his Roland story in that, and Roland ends up going to the moon. Right? There's all sorts of wild things, fantasy things that can happen in Atova Rima. But Spenser created his own stanza form that has a different kind of character. And Quinn, it would be wonderful if you could talk through how you thought about these differences.
Sure. Well, the reason I started with Spenserian stanzas is because initially because the Dragon Common Room was currently working on its epic in Spenserian stanzas. So I'm like, I'll go ahead and join in and start studying Spenserian stanzas along with you all. So that's what I started, and then I did end up falling in love with the stanza. Now, I don't have a lot of experience. I don't have any experience actually writing in other forms of iambic pentameter other than open verse, blank verse. But I decided to go for it.
We don't really either. We started with Alexander Pope. It's just couplets, right? Heroic couplets. Yeah. And then we went to Atova Rima, which is, it's a little, we sort of stepped ourselves up, and you just like leapt for Spenserian stanzas to go.
I did. I liked that. When I was in elementary school, they gave me the little piece of paper to sign up for orchestra class, and my mom had talked to me about, you should play the cello. And then they handed me the paper, and they had 4 instruments: the violin, the viola, the cello, and the bass that they wanted me to, that I was able to choose from. And I'm like, the only one I've never heard of before is the viola. I'm going for that one.
So you're just going to go for the hardest one you can pick.
I did appreciate that when I was learning about the Spenserian stanza, them saying, "Oh, this has gone into obscurity. No one really does this anymore." And I'm like, "Yes, I'm doing that."
It's my kind of thing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Although you found some good research, that you found that book. I did look at the chapter on the Spenserian stanza, and pointing out that there's some fairly famous poets that used it. Byron, for one.
Right.
Yeah, and oh no, who are the other ones? The book that you linked from the Internet Archive, it has several of the great Romantic poets in the 19th century used Spenserian stanzas as well.
Right, Byron and Tennyson and a couple others. I don't have it pulled up right now, but a few Victorians played with it. Sometimes in partial and only parts of the poem, and other times they did larger works with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
we've kept you a long time, and we're going to keep you until we get through this particular the meditation. That you were. It's hard being it's hard being on stream, isn't it? This is I'm very impressed with people that can do it for hours and hours and hours, because it's actually challenging. guys?
Oh, the time's flown by,
Oh,
and
good.
I
Okay.
have more time, so I have as much time as we need.
Okay.
So it's
Well, some of it is like what's appropriate amount to like
right.
drain your energy monster like. Um, that you've been saying to me in the as we were preparing for tonight how there's certain kinds of turns and tensions that you really you found you really liked in the stanzas. That's what I want you to talk about.
Right, right. Let's go and look at the one you've pulled up here. So I'll just start by reading side by side if that's you think that's a good
Mm-hmm.
place to start.
Get people to pay
Okay,
attention
so
to it.
okay, so we're back in the dank and bloody crypt. And she's just picked up the baby. We like our treats alive, the monster purred. She towered smoothly, slinking to approach. You have a wish? Then speak it to the third. I'm hers, she said. You monster, cursed roach. The lady sniveled, pierced by the reproach. Eratosh, she tried in vain to speak. I'm barren. That's the name of the goddess of monsters, by the way, if anyone's wondering, is Eratosh. So she's trying to speak to this monster in the, as if she's Eratosh's representative. Eratosh, she tried in vain to speak. I'm barren. Then her bladder was a brooch. The shadow sneered and stroked the baby bleak. Oh, insect, vermin, beast, is that but all you seek? I kind of interrupted the rhythm with my digression there, my bad. But um,
Okay, so
yeah, so I want to.
that's in the stanza form that you're using now, right? But you also
Right.
how much of the poem did you write in the Otovarima too?
I actually I didn't write anything but what I've shown you. Really, I
Okay.
thought it would be a fun exercise for this stream
Oh, you did this
to
specially for us to show us like what the difference is. Okay.
yeah to give us something to talk about. We could because you wanted to compare. You wanted to talk about the Spenserian stanza, so I thought let's compare. Let's rewrite a couple stanzas.
Okay.
So in Ottawa we like our treats alive. The monster purred. She towered smoothly, slinking to approach. You have a wish? Then speak it to the third. I'm hers, she said, you monster, cursed roach. Uh, Eratosh, the lady mule deterred. I'm barren. Then her bladder was a brooch. The shadow sneered and stroked the baby bleak. Oh, insect beast, is that but all you seek? So I want to point out a couple of things here, and I'm mainly comparing Spenserian. Like I'm going to talk about the advantages of Spenserian stanzas versus Ottava Rima. There's two main things I notice here in the comparison, and it's really great that the first one is that it's really great that we have that middle couplet. In fact, a lot of the advantages turn around that middle couplet that he's stuck in there. Spenser has stuck in there, so that you can punctuate something.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
That you can almost take a break. I believe that chapter was talking about how you can take a break for a second, or maybe no, that was the last. That was the Alexandrian. Excuse me. Um, but I really like the other stanza. One of the other ones that I did was when we did. I'll bring this up right now because it's relevant. Um, when she's having her soliloquy and she's thinking about the goddess of monsters who is good, and she's wondering how she can, what she's like.
Here, well, tell me which we're going to. So, Shawl told her all,
No, the other one.
but if she
I'm trying to remember
deigned,
the first. Yes, but if she deigned, um, there it is. But if she deigned to end all life, she's meditating on she is a monster, but then why hasn't she destroyed the universe? Because monstrosity is evil.
mm,
But if she deigned to end all life, she would. She'd do it, raise us all with just a thought. Instead, she joined her hand unto the good, and wound her daughter round creation taut. That dragon in the sky is proof we're bought. That boom,
mm-hmm.
just right there. I love that how you can slam something home with that couplet, and it can really punch sometimes. Um, and so I love that about the Spenserian
Well,
stanza.
because it's 9 lines, and so there's a middle. I mean, this is what's interesting.
Right.
I mean, you're describing now. This is gonna make me go back and look at what we've written and how much. So most of what we're conscious of is the pressure of the rhymes.
Right.
And because you have this, so everybody to notice, right? The Spenserian stanza has 9 lines, and the Otoverima has 8. The first 4 lines that you have in each one are the same because it's A B A B. But then so the rhyme would, good, thought, taught. And if you look in the Otoverima, it's would, good, thought, taught. I've got them on screen for people to see. But
Right.
then in the Spenserian, you take the B rhyme of the first 4 lines and repeat it in the 5th line, which is what you're calling
Right.
a repeated couplet, which I've usually thought of the Spenserian as A B A B B C B C C. Right. And so the punch on the last line in the Spenserian stanza is that last line is a foot longer. So that whatever happens in that last line is always like a you know crescendo conclusion of the
Yeah, it's a
thought.
punctuation.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the middle line, the first C line it's the turn. Right? You can punctuate it or it can be a turn in the story.
Right. And
Exactly.
it's interesting in that what we've learned writing things like each of these stanzas, these little chunks of stanzas, they're little squares, kind of. They're not perfect squares like a sonnet, but a sort of they're about a sentence thought, right? They're not really paragraph
Right.
long in regular prose terms, right? But they each have to be their own contained moment. Spenser does not use enjambment very much at all, and therefore we don't, because we're no good at it.
Right.
We have some in the stanza. No, in the stanza we wrote today, it got enjambment and it worked.
It did.
Yes,
it did work.
excellent.
Yeah, it does work.
But because of the end rhymes, you're usually punching on the end of they're masculine rhymes, and you end on the rhyme, and so they're all very tidy, but it's necessary to have the sort of structure that we're pointing you all to now, that the thought has to have this kind of opening, middle, and close in each
Right.
moment. Yeah.
And I think the Spenserian compared to Otoverima, I feel like, I mean, I haven't written a lot in it, but it feels like it just kind of marches towards that
gallops.
towards that couplet. Yeah. And it doesn't have a lot of space like Spenserians do for turning and weaving. It's got that braided, the Spenserian stanza, it's a braid. And it just seems to flow better, in my opinion, because it kind of weaves in that C rhyme a little bit more stealthily, and it feels like it flows better. And so
yeah, so this would say, if on the Otoverima you guys see, it goes A B A B A B C C, and so the feel, even though those first 4 lines are exactly the same in each one, and so you can say, oh, well, they're basically, no, it's different because it's like a musical movement. I think you're right to use Spenserian for your story because it's darker. That Spenserian can be much more ponderous and terrifying. Whereas the we used Otoverima to write Aurora Borealis, and it really worked there because it's silly.
Yes. Yes. It's a drum beat. It's ba-bum, 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 ba-bum.
Yeah. It clips along. And for the bears in Aurora Borealis, it was actually perfect.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the marching penguins.
Go ahead.
And the marching penguins in Aurora Borealis too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's I can understand why. I mean, Ariosto is silly as all get out, right? I've not read the whole thing, but I've read enough of it to get into the stanza form, and it's goofy, right? So maybe a Otoverima Spenser just gets heavy allegory and philosophical, and it can carry that. It would be interesting whether, I'm not sure Otoverima could carry what we're writing in Draco Alchemicus. Probably couldn't.
Right. And
I don't think it could. No.
Yeah. So in Otoverima, you you can see that the middle couplet, it really gives it something, going to this stanza again. But if she deigned to end all life, she'd do it, raise us all with just a thought. Instead, she joined her hand into the good and wound her daughter around creation taught. Who are you, goddess? Say how you withstood and stayed your. You see, there's not that pause where you can feel Garshal being struck by something like, that dragon in the sky is proof we're, but you like it, and it gives you the space to let those thoughts breathe like that,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't really feel in Ottava Rima. And then it does it again at the end, where it has the stanza, and lets you linger on that conclusion just a bit longer with that Alexandrine, which is, for the viewers, it's the line that has 6 feet instead of 5,
Right.
as the concluding line. Oh, insect, vermin, beast, is that but all you seek? And as opposed to the Ottava Rima version of that, it's kind of not quite as emphatic. Oh, insect, beast, is that but all you seek?
Right. It's too quick.
Right.
It trips. But
Yeah.
the insect, vermin, beast, the pause really
Right, just that
underlines it.
little.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. Right. So those are some of the things that By the way, a spider just went behind your sting sword. I just saw it on the
Oh,
on the
geez, that's scary.
Right. There is. Oh my God.
I would have jumped out of my seat.
Okay,
Ugh.
it's Shelob,
Gosh, I'm gonna look.
it's like okay, so okay, so
Ugh.
this was, I mean, it was lovely hearing you or having you in conversation and now talk about the sort of feel of the structure, because I was saying last night in our tech test, I have 2 modes. One, I get, if it's like when I'm driving, I get in the lane that I know I need to be in, and I just stay there. Oh, and also that I never read the manual of anything. It drives my husband nuts. That, you know, sort of leap in and start practicing, right? And what you've described for us in these stanza forms are things we have discovered along the way, but I never knew, because it's more just I have this. I'm listening for it when we're writing. That's saying the rhymes and the beats and the sense all have to be there, but what's lovely is the way you've been able to articulate why it works, which
Yeah,
I like.
that is great. It's very thoughtful.
So he also wanted to show us how he struggles, right? So we have 2 different versions of the same stanza, and you were asking me to pick between the 2, and I'm like, I can't, because these are one at a time. So this is the old version, and then we'll have the new version, but that this is a lovely example of showing you all the way in which, I mean, everything hinges on choosing the right words in these stanzas, and we will have this experience. One, I mean, and Casey is much more like grammar Nazi on it than I am. I mean, she's rhyme Nazi. I'm grammar Nazi. She's rhyme Nazi. It's great. That, you know, if the rhyme isn't right, Casey will be sitting there going, it doesn't rhyme. And I'm like, but I like that word. And
and we have changed all the other words to fit one word before.
We have changed all of the other words to fit the better rhyme, right? And Casey's always
Right.
Casey is always right.
Oh, I'm going to record that. No, I'm sorry.
No, the thing is, when the rhyme is off, the sense is off, right? And I'll be absolutely. I mean, we've been writing together a long time now, and so this has happened more than once. That I'll be like, but no, the word's right. It happened today, right? And Casey's like, well, this word's better, and I'm like, that's this wrong sense. So by the end of the hour of that stanza, we're like, nope, she was right. And it was because the rhyme mattered so much, right? And then I win the grammar debates, right? It's like, well, mostly. Sometimes I don't.
That's cool.
But you know, so it's everything has to work. It can't, and so we're impressed that you're doing this all by yourself, because it takes 5 of us to, or 3 of us to do one stanza at a time. Talk through the differences that you're feeling in these 2 stanzas. So I'll read them, and then you can listen. All right. So this is your first one. Then all at once the rushing fog grew thick. Sorry, I'll start over.
Oh, should we give a little preface for the viewers here? This is okay.
Then all at once the rushing fog grew thick. A gasp of primal terror quelled the crowd. A biting gust, this was no parlor trick, it was her breath. The people blanched and bowed. The eyes appeared, and thunder rumbled loud. Had Shawl incurred the city's stormy wrath? Not so, from cloud strode blue-eyed goddess proud, her sagely robes, her glance a bolting gath. The queen of witches here, the second Rakashath. Now we read one stanza of Spenser a day, and we never have any idea what's going on. Because the pace is such that if you only read one a day, you kind of it's like what did he just describe there? We're getting the concentrate on the sound, right? So you have the thick trick rhyme there. Crowd bowed, loud, proud, wrath, gath, Rakashath. And that's usually what we check for in terms of make sure the rhyme lines have actually worked. The eyes appeared and thunder rumbled loud. I like how you're using line 5. That you're consciously using that as a center. Okay, so should we and I'll read the next one and then we go back to make. So everybody, did you hear that?
Yes.
Okay, here's the second version. Then all at once the rushing fog grew dense. A gasp of fear and reverence quelled the crowd. Impending every dread swirled down, intense. It was her breath. The townsfolk blanched and bowed. The eyes appeared and thunder rumbled loud. Shawl flinched. Was this the city's stormy wrath? Not so. From clouds strode blue-eyed goddess proud. Her sagely robes, her glance a bolting gath. The queen of witches here, the second Rakashath. Which one do you like better, Casey?
I would like the Spenserian better.
They're both Spenserian. These are both Spenserian.
Yeah. Oh, are they?
Yeah. So he's okay. So mine, it's somewhat. I can't see my screen very well. This one he changed the first line rhyme from.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I got the right one.
Thick trick. No, this is an exercise one rather than one in your
crowd. Yeah, trick.
That's in the old version that you have.
That's the old version.
And so the new one, instead of saying the first line as then all at once the rushing fog grew thick, this one says then all at once the rushing fog grew dense.
Yeah, I see that one.
Okay. Oh, yes, I did send them to you. A gasp of fear and reverence quelled the crowd, impending every dread swirled down, intense. And you were correcting there, Quinn, against parlor trick versus intense.
Right. Well, there were a couple of things that went into that, and that third line, the third line was really the part that I was trying to fix because it did a couple of things. The very first version of it said the worst chill yet, and I looked back through and checked how many times had I used the word chill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do that a lot. You go back and it's like you realize our characters are constantly turning, but that's okay because they're planets. But it's like
right.
It's something, whether it's a motif or whether it's a tick is tricky to fix. Yeah.
Right. So I tried to minimize the reuse of words here. So I was searching for another phrase to use there, and I first landed on a biting gust. Going on with the appearance of this cloud, this godly cloud where the monster goddess is coming in, and she's stormy, she's billowing, she's unknowable, she's there's something there, and there's a lot of stormy imagery there, but I didn't quite like it. And then I thought, what else could I do? And then I tried. I did a very simple change. I just found the synonym for thick and just let's try dense.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately I could say, oh, intense. That's a good descriptor. And then I did impending every dread, where it's I'm trying to capture this feeling because Rakashath is each of the three sisters represents a different archetype of monstrosity, and hers is the Lovecraftian god. the fear, the mystery. The first is might, the second is the mystery and terror of monstrosity, and then the third is something special, which I don't need to get into right now, but it represents, so she's supposed to represent the heart of monstrosity. But so this being of mystery and terror is coming down, and she's legitimately one of the most powerful beings in this universe. But I added in the reverence part because it's not like the townsfolk don't know her, because she actually stops in occasionally to see how her little manstead is doing. But I was wrestling with how to describe that in a very concise manner, and that's another thing I'm sure you've experienced as well, is I've got this tiny line, and I've got to load as much detail, as much image into that line as I can without breaking the grammar.
Right. Which is very, I mean, it's challenging, and that we have,
Right.
I mean, you have to do things like the I have a ban on filler words, right? That you don't want to use filler words just to get the beat in. All is one. All, you know, all is usually because they're like pauses in English, but they don't add anything to your sense. And if you only have, you know, 10 beats, 10 or 5 beats, 10 syllables, you don't want to waste any of them.
Right. And if you stick to the rule, you end up making a much richer line, much richer verse.
I found that, and a lot of those times, I think I left a few filler words in, just, you know, there's a couple of rhythm words that you can get away with, but yeah, I would always find that the ones that didn't feel right, I could take those filler words out, and when I finally cracked it, it was a much richer line.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was wrestling with this, and I kind of invented this little term, like you don't know what's inside the cloud with Rakashath. No one has seen a body necessarily, except for her angelic avatar. Her so this mystery, it's kind of like the 1984 everyone knows what's in room 101 Winston. You know, and but nobody ever sees her. So I'm trying to capture that here, impending every dread. I kind of invented a little term there.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Because it's what you fear. It could be anything that you fear.
Right, but it's also a group of townsfolk experiencing it all at the same time. So it's everybody's every dread.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
In fact, thanks for saying that, because I didn't really think of it that way before. But you're right. You're right. Yeah, you just helped.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
No, that's cool.
Well, and this being another thing that's been very enjoyable about learning to write in this mode, that because of the way poetry encourages you to find these sorts of connections, they're there. Right.
Right.
That you're, you know, that there, if the rhymes are all right, somehow the sense becomes stronger, which is fascinating, right? It's like again, the stanza we were writing today, it was like it's not we start usually with I mean, we've got a plot, but it keeps, as writing in my own experience happens, it's like it changes as you write. So, you know, you've established certain things, and they become clear. But this happens, you know, regularly as we're writing the stanza. We try to write we usually can write one a day when we're in writing mode. And we try not to write more than one a day, because it's like, okay, so we finished it quickly, let's polish it. They always get better, right? Oh, it's going slow today, that's okay, right? It's like, you know, it's a sort of crafting it out, but that we will discover things as the rhymes are not there yet. Finding the rhyme helps us find the sense, and it's
it often the rhyme will actually just deliver the right plot twist you might be looking for in that particular line, or just an aspect of some of a character's personality. It was there, it will deliver it to you. And if you try to shoehorn the wrong rhyme in, it's almost like, yes, the muse will not let you do that.
Right.
It will sound wrong. It will look wrong. It'll bother you. You'll say, "We're done, yay!" And then the next day, you're like, "No, we're not
No, we're
done.
not done.
We have to,
This
we
needs
have to fix
polishing.
this."
It doesn't
Yeah,
work. Yeah, and I mean that one we've had one recently where I was convinced line 8 was right? And then we read it back out the next day and it was like that's like, oh, it breaks it completely. So
yeah.
there's
Right.
an interesting phenomenon of writing in the stanza form, and this is a sort of, this is an artistic problem, generic, generally, that we've all been told for the last 100 years or so, believe, create, use your imagination, right? And so that's blobs and it's all gray, right? It's like that modern art, Jackson Pollock, thank you so much, right, turned into a mess because this refusal to work within the form means you never learn anything from the form. And
It's well, it's the paint version of free verse, right?
right.
It's like it's all anybody does anymore. A Jackson Pollock might be interesting, mixed in with other things, other types of art that had a very specific and recognizable form. But if it's all you see all the time, it just looks like a piece of old canvas he cleaned his paintbrushes on.
Right.
Everything starts to look alike.
As we were meditating on that, and yes, I mean, I like some modern art, but I wouldn't give up figurative art, you know, if I
Right.
had to choose one or the other. Sometimes you can just stare at those little paintings and it's like, be entertained by the little shapes you can find in them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But as yeah, but as we were meditating on that just now, I I kind of had a thought where this process of um, this process of working on these rhymes, these verses within these rules, it almost becomes the instrument of revelation,
Mm-hmm.
um, where you're like when I believe I DM'd you a while back and I said it's a project that happens between you, God, and the English language, and the English language gets a vote, and
Uh-huh.
it it's really interesting how God works through you on this. It almost, and it feels like it at least, where you're wrestling with it, and then as you finally manage to shape it, it feels like a revelation, and
Yes.
I believe it is. I pray when I write and
Mm,
ask that he shine his light through my art. Um,
beautiful.
It's working.
Yes, it
Thank you.
is.
Yes, and that I like that. I like that as a, I mean, going to our McLuhan, that, I mean, McLuhan, when he said the medium is the message, he meant the word became flesh, right? And he said that finally
Exactly.
in some
Mm,
of his later lectures, where he admits that what he was doing was always Christian. It was always about the incarnation, and therefore that the medium being the message. He says the one perfect moment that it happens is in the incarnation, but that we are shaped by the extensions of our minds and sense and bodies and such in the media that we use. But that being it, as with, back to my St. Francis, right? It's no, actually, I was thinking about the blurb that I was writing to help advertise my friend's book. That insofar as the language names the creatures, it reveals to us the Creator, and that in the practice of our art, and I mean, one of the, you're doing it too, but one of the fun things that we've done about Draco Chemicus is we're constantly researching specific elements of the setting or the clothes or the manners or the objects or and finding it, the writing the poetry has to be incredibly not just material but particular and physical and um specific. It needs concrete. That's the word I was looking for, right? That poetry is in fact incredibly concrete. When people tend to think of it as, oh, it's abstract and fairy like and stuff like that, it's like, no, fairy is incredibly concrete. Tolkien said that
yeah.
too.
Right.
Fairy is the most concrete thing you have. It's the real world.
Yeah, they don't call it world building for nothing.
Right. Right. And that but you're building it, and Le Guin says this in her meditation on fantasy too, that you're in this fantasy world, you're creating it through the language, so every word counts.
Hmm.
And
Right.
and that Spenser doing it with his poetries, the absolutely every word, every beat counts, every sound, every diphthong and consonant counts, because you're doing it with the precision of the creator. Okay, so Quinn, I am terribly sorry to tell you that you're breaking up. which I think must be at your end. You've got gremlins or goblins.
Yeah, I've noticed that for a while. I
Yeah,
was
so
hoping you couldn't see it. It was just me.
no, we've stretched the internet to its monstrous
Oh,
bearings. So we are so happy to have you as a member of the Dragon Common Room, and now
yes.
as a revealed poet.
Thank you.
With us.
And it's wonderful work. It's beautiful. What you've written is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you, both of you.
And so you need to tell people where to find you, who you are, under how many different whichever avatars you want them to find you under, and know that you can come and hang out with him in the Dragon Common Room as Fat. And
yes, ma'am.
But you have to tell them where else to find you.
Yes. Well, the poem is right now. It's just the poem, but the poem is published on a new Substack channel that I just created. It's called A Gardener in a War .substack.com. That's A Gardener in a War .substack.com, and you can read the entire poem there. I'm just about to send my latest edits to that article. Yeah, and I might post some other things there myself, and of course you can find me at the Dragon Common Room on Telegram. Connect with me there, and we'll go from there.
Excellent. So I'll put the link for the Substack and for the guide, and so guys, I always link everything in our descriptions, like the Dragon Common Room site, the episode guide, all of the things we've been talking about tonight are all vastly and massively cross-linked and linked and more linked and such. Please follow the links. and we hope that by way of our proof of method that Quinn has shown us, that it's fun and it works as a practice, and we invite you to share with us in the light, as Quinn has. Right? So
it's been a pleasure. Let's do it again sometime.
You will have to, and
sure.
we're gonna have to smack those gremlins on your sound.
We'll work
guys,
on it. Yeah.
Guys, we really tried. That's why we were a bit late to start, because we were fighting gremlins on the other side, and so we were happy that they stayed away for most of tonight.
Yes, they did.
They did, but they came back. So it's like wherever you are, you got to go. I got a spider behind my sword now.
Oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
It was a little bitty spider. Hey, we have there's all sorts of bugs and stuff, and it looked like a spider, not one of our centipedes. We've got those too. Anyway, we somehow conjured a spider. I've never had a spider on stream until.
And Drake doesn't chase them down and try to eat them?
Not on the wall. He eats them on the floor.
Okay.
He can't climb walls. I think he's underneath me. Yeah, Drake is behind me. He's back there behind me.
Hi, Drake.
Yeah, he can't hear you. Anyway, so thank you so much, Quinn, for being such a great sport and sharing your writing with us and helping demonstrate the proof that poetry writing works.
My pleasure and privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.